dear viewers. Today I have a spine-chilling story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Let's dive into the eerie tale of the endless agony. Hashtag the endless agony. Standing over the lifeless body of his beloved wife, Eric mused about how meaningless his life had been. He didn't deserve to live anymore. There was no point in living without her. He finally understood the unbearable pain she must have felt when their only child was stillborn. Holding the pistol to his temple, he closed his eyes and pulled the trigger. To his horror, a burning, dull pain lingered in the left half of his skull as he floated in the darkest darkness Eric had ever experienced. The sensation wouldn't go away, it only kept getting worse as time passed. He tried screaming, but no sound came out. Trying to feel his way around yielded nothing but further terror, trapped, hurting, and alone. He floated in the void, lighter than air.
Until a light flashed briefly beside him, bringing with it a dull, burning pain. Another one followed, and another, and another, and another. Eric was screaming at the top of his lungs, writhing in agony as he sank deeper and deeper into a sea of aches he couldn't escape. He spent what must have felt like millennia sinking into a tunnel of explosive irritation before being deprived of any remaining shred of sanity. By the time he fell into the crimson skies, he could no longer recognize anything other than the cruel violence his exposed nerve endings had inflicted on him. With his mind shattered, he couldn't even comprehend. He was falling back first into a web of bony thorns. Even upon impact, when dozens of splinters had penetrated what was once skin and muscle tissue, he failed to feel anything other than the deep-seated pain he was intimate with for countless lifetimes. Only the sight of worming legions of others brought him back into the malignant embrace of fear. Once the realization he wasn't alone finally sank in, Eric experienced a rebirth in the arms of despair. The sight of countless others like him, all naked, pale, gaunt, trapped in a web of splintered bones, awoke him from his agonal stupor. His newfound vitality had brought nothing but suffering. The sensation of innumerable stab wounds quickly enveloped him in new kinds of anguish. He felt his face contort into the shape of a scream, just like all those others around him. The silence remained, however. His constant screaming eons ago had destroyed his vocal cords. The eerie quiet finally broke under the weight of paralyzing sirens blaring in the distance, growing louder by the moment. The claws of fear dug themselves into Eric's eyes with the appearance of the harbinger of doom above him. Its grotesque shadow eclipsed all else as its oppressive presence drew nearer. The airborne abomination took the shape of a winged humanoid colossus with an equine muzzle. Its sickly green hide cast the odor of death. The monstrosity unhinged its jaws above Eric's convulsing carcass as its evil eye stared into the remaining pieces of his soul. A nauseating sound of choking blended into the sonic ocean of danger hanging in the putrid air. A thunderclap, a monolith of suffocating pain, collapsed on top of Eric, threatening to bisect him as he felt himself flying into the burning heavens. He was lighter than air, crashing into the brackish ice sheets below. His ears rung and his entire being spun around itself on an invisible axis. The pain that had plagued him for so long was finally subsiding. Bliss wrapped its hands around his broken shell, bringing joyous apathy. The smoldering cold dug into Eric's wounds ruthlessly, but he could barely feel it anymore. Whatever vestige of feeling was left clinging to his form was quickly fading away. His soul was finally free. Finally, death has finally come to collect. It came undetected, concealed by the infantile wailing of a monstrous feudal titan. The ravenous cyclopean beast lifted Eric's cadaver from blood-stained ice by its exposed viscera, driven by an insatiable lust to consume. With his world slowly turning upside down, Eric stared apathetically at the abominable thing holding his body aloft. The cancerous serpentine tumor growing out of the thing's lower half seemed to stretch into infinity as it pulled him closer to its toothless maw. Untainted by the horrors of terminal pains, Eric closed his eyes. The light sensation of pressure building up around his skull slowly pushed him back into the void. The filthy claws of fear dug into his heart once again when a burning, dull pain dug into the back of his skull. He was floating in the darkest darkness he had ever experienced. The sensation wouldn't go away, it only kept getting worse as time passed. He tried screaming, but no sound came out. Trying to feel his way around yielded nothing but further terror. Trapped, hurting, and alone, he floated in the void, lighter than air, until a light flashed briefly beside him, bringing with it a dull, burning pain. Another one followed, and another, and another, and another. Eric found himself back in the crimson skies, plummeting once more. This time he tried to brace himself for the impending agony, but nothing could prepare him for the bone-piercing impact with the spiked ground. Every jagged edge felt like it was driving deeper into his soul, tearing at whatever remained of his sanity. Among the throng of tormented souls, Eric recognized faces, twisted in pain and despair. They were the faces of the lost, people he once knew in life. His parents, his friends, even his stillborn child, now grown and anguished. Their eyes, void of life, stared back at him, each one a reflection of his own suffering. Desperation clawed at him as he struggled to free himself from the web of bone. The spectral harbinger circled above, its malignant gaze never leaving him. Each pass it made sent waves of fear and hopelessness crashing over him. He was trapped in an endless cycle of torment, each loop bringing new horrors. The sirens wailed louder, their sound mingling with the anguished cries of the damned. Eric's attempts to scream were futile. His shredded vocal cords could produce no sound. His body convulsed, racked with silent sobs as the pain became too much to bear. Suddenly, the web of bones shifted, pulling Eric deeper into the ground. He felt himself being dragged down, past the rotting corpses of those who had been trapped before him. The ground opened up, revealing an even darker abyss below. Eric fell, his descent feeling like an eternity. In this deeper hell, the air was thick with the stench of decay. Shadows moved around him, whispering his name, taunting him with his failures. Each whisper was a knife to his heart, reminding him of the pain he had caused and the lives he had ruined. He could see the faces of his victims, their eyes filled with anger and sorrow. Among them, his wife stood, her ghostly form shimmering in the darkness. Her eyes, once filled with love, now burned with betrayal. "Why, Eric?" she asked, her voice echoing in his mind. "Why did you leave me?" Eric tried to reach out to her, but his hands passed through her form. Her image faded, replaced by the monstrous fetal titan that had plagued his nightmares. The creature's cyclopean eyes stared into his soul, and its toothless maw opened wide. Eric's body was lifted once more, suspended by the thing's serpentine limbs. He was helpless, a puppet to its whims. The creature's hunger was insatiable, and he was its next meal. He felt his body being pulled apart, piece by piece, each part devoured slowly, methodically. As the last pieces of his flesh were consumed, Eric's consciousness began to fade. He welcomed the darkness, the final release from his endless agony. But even in this moment of respite, a part of him knew that the cycle would begin anew. He would be reborn in this hell, to suffer for eternity. The last thing he heard was the creature's monstrous wail, a sound that would haunt him for all time. His final thought was of his wife and child, their faces a beacon of light in his everlasting darkness. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-chilling tales. Stay safe and stay curious.